Mormonism does not teach that God the Father is the creator of the heavens and earth, and that they don't believe he brought the entire creation into being. They do not believe what they call, to sound intelligent like divine mercy, creatio ex nihilo, creation out of nothing. So they don't believe he's the creator God. You guys don't know this about Mormonism. Don't take my word for it. Go and ask a Mormon apologist. In your view, did the Father create the entire creation from nothing and brought the creation into being from nothing? No. They believe God the Father was a man. So that means there was a creation before him, and he was elevated to godhood, and then he took matter that already existed and shaped and formed it with the other gods that accompanied him. This is not the same concept of the Judeo-Christian belief of God as a personal creator who created all things from nothing, brought the entire creation into being from nothing, and sustains it. So under that view, Islam actually is closer to Judaism, Christianity, because Muslims will tell you God created everything from nothing, the creator of the heavens and the earth. Nothing existed except God, and then he brought creation into being. So no, Mormonism is not more compatible or closer to the Judeo-Christian concept of God. I just wanted to make it clear.
Yeah.
Why?
Because I think there's at least a greater degree of sincerity there as far as trying to talk about God. Whereas the problem with Mormonism that would make me have more doubt than with Islam is that Joseph Smith was just a common swindler to begin with. And I don't know if he might have been an atheist because he had no morals, and he was but he was clearly trying to tell the biblical tale in some way. He was just trying to swindle people. But the lack of sincerity there with Joseph Smith could be a problematic mental representation that could cause troubles for reference. Though I think ultimately, I think Mormonism is not based really on Joseph Smith's thoughts. It's based on the books of Mormon, which clearly are, purportedly taking up from the biblical narrative. Whereas I think in Islam, I think the founders of Islam were much more sincere in wanting to advocate for monotheism over the polytheistic and henotheistic.
Yeah, that's not a good response over there.
Well, the last part was starting to get somewhere. The monotheistic understanding.
Yeah, he started with an okay answer.
He started that, well, Joseph Smith's less sincere than Muhammad. How does he know that?
Right.
Exactly.
Well, I mean, how do you know Muhammad was more sincere than Joseph Smith or vice versa? That's not a good argument to reject one or accept one as being closer to the Judeo-Christian concept of God than the other. Let's say they were both sincere. That's not an argument.
No, that has nothing to do, with the topic. I don't know why you even brought that up. If they're both sincere or Muhammad is more sincere than the other. I mean, it just doesn't make any sense. Yep.
No, I don't want to say anything else because I think you want to say something divine and you want him to finish his point. Because I have more to say there, but I'm just
no, go for it. I believe I agree with what you said prior to what we just heard. He actually ended up touching on it ever so a little bit. He spoke of monotheism, which is the right approach, right? But I mean, dude just didn't give a real answer, to be honest.
Yeah, that's sincerity. What does sincerity got to do?
Yeah, what the hell is that?
And how do you determine that? I mean, you're assuming that what you read about Muhammad are accurate sources on the life and character of Muhammad. But even when you read those sources, Muhammad does not come out looking like a sincere person. He comes looking like a demonized narcissist, misogynist,
right,
who elevated himself to the level of God. We can get into that. But yeah, that's not a good argument. The argument is because according to the Judeo-Christian concept of God, and I want you guys to understand, we believe there's a personal creator God, no beginning, no end, who created all things from nothing,
right,
brought the entire creation into being, and sustains all creation. Mormons don't believe that about God the Father. let me repeat. Mormons do not think the Father has always been God without beginning, without end. Don't take my word for it. Go to their website. They don't call themselves Mormons anymore. They call themselves Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Yeah, right. Latter-day Saints. You have Satan's soldiers and disciples can be called saints, then yeah, you can call them saints. But they say he was a man. He was elevated God. And in fact, I asked the Mormon, I've asked several Mormons. So the Father is not the first God. Meaning, if you believe the Father was a man and he was elevated to godhood, became God,
Right.
that means there must have been a God ahead of him, above him. Yeah. I go, so then who is the original God? Who is the God that brought this into being? They go, we don't know. That's their answer. We don't know because we are not told. So God the Father is not the original God. A man who was brought into being by some divine entity, and he was elevated to godhood, but we don't know any other God beyond him because that's not part of the revelation. Joseph Smith didn't tell us. Brigham Young didn't tell us. Our prophets didn't tell us. They don't tell us. But obviously, if he was a man, that means creation already existed because he lived on a planet. In fact, they say that God the Father lived on a planet called Kolob, Kolob, and that God the Father, elevated to godhood, still has a body of flesh. They call him a personage of flesh. And he has a consort. They call her Heavenly Mother. And I got articles quoting their official website. They don't know much about the Heavenly Mother. They just know she's there. So the implication is that this Heavenly Mother sired all these children, because in Mormonism, this God, who was a man, who became God, has a heavenly wife, because she's the Heavenly Mother, and they have children. And these children are born as spirits. The first child born is Yahweh, Jehovah, who then becomes the man Jesus. I just want you to understand. So if you ask the Mormon, who was the first offspring of Heavenly Mother and God the Father? Yahweh, Jehovah. Who is that? Oh, that's the one who becomes the man Jesus. In Mormon teaching, all of us were there as spirit children of God the Father and Heavenly Mother. We were then sent into these bodies so that, like God the Father, we can achieve godhood and become our own gods and have our own planets. That's their Mormon teaching. So you got to go through the Mormon ritual. One of their other children, who is Jehovah's younger brother, is Lucifer, whom we know as Satan. So just to give you how weird this theology is. When the Council of the Gods wanted to come up with a plan on how these spirit children can be gods as well and have their own planets, Yahweh, Jehovah, came up with a plan, and Lucifer came up with a plan. Lucifer said, send them into flesh bodies, and I'm going to force them to do your will so they can become gods. Jehovah said, no, that's Jesus, before he became the man Jesus. We will give them free will. And if they fail to live up to the standard of God the Father, then Jehovah said he would come and then would atone for them. So the Father liked Jehovah's idea. He didn't like Lucifer's idea. Those who liked Lucifer's idea rebelled, and their punishment was they would not be allowed to come into the world and be born as human beings. All who agreed with God the Father and Jehovah, they were sent to become human beings so he can become gods. That means I was there and I agreed with Jehovah. Those who didn't agree with Jehovah remain as spirit beings, and those are the demons. This is what they teach. How is that compatible with the Jewish belief? God is distinct from creation, a personal creator that brought creation into being and sustains it, which is what Christians believe, which is what Muslims believe. That's how you answer the question.
Exactly. Do you have anything to say, James? Or
No, How can you go after what Sam just said, man? So to be honest, if that's the case, right, and now that we understand what Sam just said, if that's the case, what Trent said is true, but not due to sincerity. Obviously, not due to sincerity, but for other reasons, right? Just
But y'all know what's funny?
yeah, brother.
Yeah.
The Council of Gods is
No,
the
no, no.
Council of Gods.
Share my screen. I'm going to show you the articles. Share my screen.
I got you.
Okay, hold on. You got it? I got you. Hold on,
Okay, funny. Okay.
Let me see what it is. Okay, which one is okay? Right here. Now watch here. You go to my blog right here. Documentation here. Boom. Let me enlarge the screen. It's all there, and I got it from their official website. They have a website. All their I'm aware that their main religious books are there because they don't just follow the Bible or the Book of Mormon. They have the Pearl of Great Price, Doctrine and Covenants. They have a lot of stuff. But so right here, you put in Mormonism, Heavenly Mother. Right? Right here. The Mormon, Satan, and premortality. Premortality means we all, if we're in the flesh, means that we were there as spirits. We agreed with the counsel of Jehovah, and we were sent in the flesh to become gods. But we must choose. Now, part of the deal was that when the Father sends us into the flesh, our memories of our past life would be erased. That's why we don't remember.
Are these pre-existent forms, Sam, in essence?
Well, they don't call them forms, but yes, like the Platonic ideals.
Yeah,
but
okay. I was wondering that one.
No, you're a soul. Yeah, but if we want to trace it historically to but Joseph Smith, I don't think he was that smart to know about. You give him too much credit. Maybe. I don't know. Right? You get what I'm saying?
It does sound like Neoplatonism. Yeah.
But I don't know if he would have been that conversant with Plato. But if you go right here, click on it. I'm going to get you the link. Boom. It's their website right here, the family. See? This is their official website. So when you go here, you'll see, in their own words, you have a Heavenly Mother. Mother in heaven. They tell you we don't know much about her. We don't pray to her, but we know she's there. And then they'll tell you the plan. Mother in heaven. So I'm not making it up. And they have their own version of Genesis, right? In the book of Abraham, where it says, and the gods said, let us make man on our image. And the gods made man. They take Elohim to be plural, and it's referring to the gods working together to create, not God by himself.
Damn. So they believe that that mother is God as well as the father?
That's the whole point here. If you
Masha
go here,
Yeshua, brother. Masha Yeshua.
Masha Yeshua here. Now, I'm going to get you the link to the first one, but if you go here, see, Joseph Smith says that there were gods. Elohim means gods, and the head of them was the Father. And then these gods came together to make man. Joseph Smith Papers. And then here, Pearl of Great Price, the book of Abraham. Right? Right here. It says, those who are with him, we will go down. For there is space there. Notice, matter already exists. And we will take of these materials and we'll make an earth whereon these may dwell. These are the gods talking about fashioning matter. The gods. And then the Lord said, let us go down. And they went down at the beginning. And they, that is the gods, organized and formed the heavens and the earth. And the spirit of the gods was brooding upon the face of the waters. You see it? And if you read your Bible, Genesis 1, it says, and God said, let there be light. Their translation or their version, and they, the gods said, let there be light. And they, the gods, comprehended the light. See what they did with Genesis? So let me get you the link here to the first one, Heavenly Mother. You could go through this and see. So now, in light of this, if someone asks you the question, here it is for you, private chat, and you can share it with your. If someone asks you the question, which concept of God is closer to Eastern Orthodox, Catholic, Christian concept, the Jewish concept? Which concept? Mormonism, Islam? You better believe it's Islam. That's just a fact.
We had to categorize verses in these 10 different categories. So I've read it 3 times back to back, very, very analytically. I looked for my really nice Quran. I couldn't find it. When I was doing a lecture tour of Iran, I got a really, really beautiful Quran, parallel English, Farsi, and Arabic. Some parts of the Quran are very beautiful. My buddy and I, when I was reading the Quran for this book, a buddy of mine decided to read it just for his general knowledge. He ended up being a groomsman at my wedding, and he had like Quran memory verses. So there's parts of it that are quite good. Now, I despise Islam. I despise Islam. I think it's, I mean, in fact, people sometimes ask me, because I do stuff on the problem of evil and other objections to the existence of God, they'll say, what makes you most doubt your faith? What threatens your faith more than anything else? And I say, Islam and Mormonism. And they're like, what are you talking about? Those things are both totally lacking in any intellectual foundation whatsoever. And I'm like, yeah, exactly. And the fact that God would allow millions and millions of people, and now billions of people, to believe these idiotic false teachings really, like, existentially bothers me. Like, that's a threat to my faith in the way that the standard problem of evil just never is. I can't stand these views, but that doesn't mean I think that it's because, but the reason that I can't stand them is because they're teaching false things about God. But there's two parts to that. They're teaching false things, and they're teaching false things about God. And if they weren't talking about the same God, then I would just say, oh, look at these silly fiction books, and it wouldn't bother me.
So,
But it does bother me.
So what do you guys think?
Go ahead, Divine. You wanted to say something. I don't want to keep you talking. You guys got to chime in.
I mean, there is some truth to what he said. He said there are false things, and then there are false things about God. And so anything that we derive from any book that is good, and the standard of good is God, then we can't say those things themselves are bad. Those things themselves, if they're good, then they can only be from God, right? But I see what he's saying. He's trying to make the distinction. He's trying to say, well, I can derive some good out of this, even though I hate it. He's just poor at communicating the message, man.
Yeah.
To add what you're saying, everyone agrees with what he just said. What do I mean?
Right.
Anytime apostate prophet joins David Wood and uses the Islamic dilemma, they're confirming Trent's point. What do I mean? What Trent is saying is, because the Quran is the result of Muhammad interacting with Jews and Christians, if you take Muhammad as the conduit of the Quran, if you go with modern scholarship, some question it, but we'll go with the traditional narrative. I need you to listen to this so I understand the argument. Because the Quran is the byproduct of Muhammad's interaction with Jews and Christians and pagans,
Right.
and hence produces the Quran, he is taking a lot of Christian theology, a lot of Jewish theology and its various manifold mutations, because he's not hearing necessarily from Orthodox Christians. He'll hear from Orthodox Christians, heretical Christians, but he can't differentiate between any of them. So
Right.
he hears what they say about God, about Jesus, and he hears their stories. And you can tell he's hearing it orally, because when he goes to then recite and have those stories written down, they contradict what we find in the Bible and even jumble up what we find in what we call the apocryphal traditions. What do I mean? You Christians got to learn this. 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th centuries, Christians were writing stories to fill out the early childhood of Jesus and what Jesus did from the age of 12 to 30. Because if you look, Jesus is born. Luke mentions that, 12 years old, he's in the temple for Passover. Nothing in between. From the time he's born, from the time he's 2 years old, from the time he has to flee to Egypt, because they're trying to kill him, and then Joseph brings him back, to the age of 12. Nothing. Then from 12, we jump to 30. Nothing about what Jesus did from 12 to 30. So the Christians, having a creative imagination, started coming up with stories about what the boy Jesus did and the teenager Jesus did. And Muhammad is hearing these stories and then thinking they're part of the revelation. He includes them in the Quran. What's that mean? That means, whether you like it or not, the Quran is assuming the Bible. The Quran is assuming Christian traditions and stories and theology. Likewise, Jewish traditions and stories. How do we know? How many times does the Quran mention the story of Moses and the Exodus and Pharaoh? How many times does it mention Abraham And how many times does it mention Isaac and Jacob and Jesus? You're telling me the Quran wasn't the production of Muhammad's dealing with Jews and Christians when you find so much biblical material in the Quran garbled up, jumbled up?
Right.
So his point is this. This is what his point is. The Quran, by aping Christian theology, is obviously going to have true things to say. Which Christian would be stupid enough to say the Quran is wrong when it says Maryam conceived Jesus as a virgin? Who's going to deny that? Which Christian is going to say the Quran is wrong when it says Isa, who's supposed to be Jesus, is the word of Allah? Allah's word that was sent down, a spirit from him. Which Christian is going to say the Quran is wrong when it says Jesus raised the dead or gives sight to the blind or cleansed lepers? Any Christian going to say that?
No.
No.
This is what he's talking about. He's saying there are truths in the Quran that are God's truth. Like Divine said, all truth is from God because God is the source of truth. Anything true, he's a source of it.
Right.
What Satan does, he'll take the truths of God and mix them with lies. But what we do is we go reclaim those truths in the Quran to bring them to the fullness of the truth. That's what he's saying.
As a preparation, right? Just like the document says, as a preparation, yeah.
And anytime apostate prophet tells you the Quran confirms the Bible, he's saying he agrees with Trent. Why? Because, wait, AP, you can't have your cake and eat it too. If you're telling me Allah of the Quran is not God, unlike the Jewish God, because they have a shared scripture, the Old Testament, but the Quran, you're telling me, confirms the Bible, which means it's assuming the Bible, which means that it's assuming that the God of the Bible is the God of the Quran. That's the starting point. But if you're going to tell me, no, all of the Quran is not God, then why are you quoting the Quran to show that the Quran says that Allah sent down the Bible and preserved it, and you must judge by it? Now, can you worship God and be in sin, worship God and commit abominations so that you're still worshiping God, but you're in such wicked sin, your worship to God is disgusting, but it's still worship to him, but he doesn't want to accept it. Yeah. Okay. Isaiah 1, 9-17. See, she goes, I was told this once by a Martionite. Do you see it? If the Lord of hosts had not left us a few survivors, we should have been Sodom and become like Gomorrah. Hear the word of the Lord, you rulers of Sodom. Give ear to the teaching of our God, you people of Gomorrah. What to me is the multitude of your sacrifices? Now look what he's saying. God is the one who commanded them to offer sacrifices, to offer incense and prayer and observe the festivals. He's saying, now stop. Now, if you ask the Israelites, are you sacrificing to a false god? We're sacrificing to Yahweh, dude. Yahweh says your sacrifices disgust me. I have had enough of burnt offerings of rams and the fat of well-fed beasts. I'm done. Enough. I do not delight in the blood of bulls, but the entire book of Leviticus is about you need to shed the blood of bulls and goats for atonement of sin, or of lambs or of goats. When you come to appear before me, who is required of you this trampling of my courts? You see that, Daniela? It's my courts, my temple. So they're going to the temple to sacrifice to God. Bring no more vain offerings. Incense is an abomination to me, but God is the one who commanded the daily incense. New moon is Sabbath and the calling of convocations. I cannot endure iniquity in solemn assembly, but God commissioned new moon festivals, Sabbaths, and gathering together and assembling. Your new moons and your appointed feasts, my soul hates. They have become a burden to me. I am weary of bearing them. When you spread out your hands, he says, I don't even want to see you pray anymore. I hate your prayers, but God, you told us to pray. Yeah, but because you're so wicked and evil and filthy, immorality, idolatry, murdering the innocent, you do all that, and then you come thinking, oh, I'll pray and it's okay. When you spread out your hands, I will hide my eyes from you. Even though you make many prayers, I will not listen. Why? Your hands are full of blood, like murdering unborn children and justifying it.
Right.
Wash yourselves, make yourself clean, remove the evil of your deeds from before my eyes. Cease to do evil. learn to do good, seek justice, correct oppression, bring justice to the fatherless, plead the widow's cause. When you do what is morally right and you fight for those who are oppressed, then your sacrifice will be pleasing. Now, would anyone be stupid enough to say they're not worshiping Yahweh? Even though it's his temple, it's his feast days, it's his Sabbaths, it's his sacrifices? Or would they say, though they're worshiping Yahweh, they are still evil and disgusting in his sight? Another one, Proverbs 15:8. The sacrifice of the wicked is an abomination to the Lord, but the prayer of the upright is acceptable to him. This is what Trent was saying. That's Isaiah chapter 1, Sentinel, verses 9 to 17. And there are other passages. Amos chapter 5, verses 21 to 27, Sentinel. Amos chapter 5, verses 21 to 27. And Hosea 6, 6 to 11. Exactly, Daniela. That's the point.
You got it, yep.
Someone be deceived. They are believing they're worshiping the true God, even though they're following a book that gives you a perverted depiction of this God, butchers the nature of this God, but you don't know that because you don't have the true revelation. But the book tells you it's the same God of Abraham, and you be duped into thinking you're worshiping that God, and God sees you don't know any better as you worship him. That's Trent's point.